The announcement hit Thursday afternoon like a thunderbolt across the NFL. Tommy Rees, the 33-year-old offensive coordinator who just watched Cleveland's offense finish 31st in scoring and get his head coach fired, was following Kevin Stefanski to Atlanta. Not as a consultant, not as a position coach, as the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. And when reporters asked how this happened, the answer was as simple as it was stunning. Stefanski wanted him, specifically requested him, made it clear that if Arthur Blank wanted to build a championship staff, Tommy Rees was non-negotiable. And Blank, the 83-year-old billionaire who just cooked steaks for Stefanski at his private estate, said yes without hesitation. Because when you hire a two-time Coach of the Year to save your franchise, you give him exactly what he asks for, even if what he's asking for is the coordinator who just helped orchestrate one of the worst offensive seasons in Browns history. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story isn't just about a coaching hire, it's about loyalty, trust, and what happens when a head coach believes so deeply in someone that he'll stake his reputation on bringing them along for the ride. And Cleveland is watching all of this unfold and realizing they just lost two key pieces of their organization to a division rival who's about to become a serious problem. Let's start with the reunion nobody saw coming. Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees spent exactly 2 years together in Cleveland. 2 years, that's it. Rees joined the Browns in 2024 as the tight ends coach and pass game specialist, working under Stefanski's system and learning the nuances of his wide zone, play-action offense. Then, before the 2025 season, Stefanski promoted him to offensive coordinator. It was a massive leap. Rees had never called plays at the NFL level. He'd been an offensive coordinator at Notre Dame and Alabama in college, sure, but the NFL is a completely different beast. Different speed, different complexity, different pressure. And Stefanski, who had called his own plays for most of his career, was handing over those responsibilities to a 32-year-old with zero NFL play-calling experience. It didn't go well. The Browns finished 31st in scoring, averaging just 16.4 points per game. They finished 30th in total offense, gaining only 262.1 yards per game. They cycled through 3 starting quarterbacks, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders, and none of them could generate any consistency. The offensive line fell apart due to injuries and poor roster construction. The wide receiver room was one of the worst in the league. And midway through the season, after a 2-6 start, Stefanski took back play-calling duties from Rees. It was a demotion, a public admission that things weren't working. And when the Browns finished 5-12 and Stefanski got fired on January 5, 2026, Rees was out of a job too. Most coordinators in that position would be radioactive, damaged goods, a cautionary tale about promoting someone too soon. But Stefanski saw something different. He saw a coach who was put in an impossible situation, who was asked to coordinate an offense with the worst quarterback situation in the league, with a decimated offensive line, with limited weapons, and with an owner and general manager who undermined him at every turn. Stefanski saw potential. He saw intelligence. He saw someone who understood his system and could execute it at a high level if given the right pieces. And when Arthur Blank hired Stefanski on January 18th and asked him what he needed to succeed in Atlanta, Stefanski's first request was Tommy Rees. Think about that for a second. Stefanski could have picked anyone. He could have brought in Brian Callahan, the former Titans head coach, who's considered one of the brightest offensive minds in football. There was buzz about that possibility. He could have promoted from within, keeping some of Atlanta's existing offensive staff to maintain continuity. He could have gone after a big-name coordinator from another team. But he didn't. He wanted Rees, because in Stefanski's mind, the failure in Cleveland wasn't about Rees's ability, it was about everything else. And now, in Atlanta, with Bijan Robinson as the first-team All-Pro running back, with Drake London as a legitimate #1 receiver, with Chris Lindstrom as an All-Pro guard anchoring the offensive line, with Kyle Pitts potentially returning as a second-team All-Pro tight end, Rees would finally have the talent to show what he could do. Arthur Blank didn't hesitate. When Stefanski made the request, Blank approved it immediately. And on January 22, 2026, the Falcons officially announced that Tommy Rees was their new offensive coordinator. It was a reunion, a second chance, and a massive statement about the kind of loyalty and trust that exists between Stefanski and Rees. But here's where it gets emotional. Tommy Rees isn't just some random coordinator. He's a former Notre Dame quarterback who grew up in the coaching ranks, grinding as a graduate assistant at Northwestern in 2015, working as an offensive assistant with the Chargers in 2016, then spending 6 years at Notre Dame as the quarterback's coach and eventual offensive coordinator. He won games, he developed talent, he earned respect. Then he went to Alabama for one season in 2023, working under Nick Saban and winning an SEC title. And when Stefanski offered him a job in Cleveland in 2024, Rees jumped at the chance because he believed in Stefanski, he believed in the system, he believed they could build something special together. And for 2 years, they tried. They worked 80-hour weeks. They grinded through film sessions at 3 in the morning. They battled through injuries, bad roster decisions, and organizational dysfunction. And when it all came crashing down, when Stefanski got fired and Rees was out of a job, it would have been easy for them to go their separate ways. Rees had options. He interviewed for the Browns' head coaching job, which tells you everything you need to know about how respected he is, despite the offensive struggles. He had interest from college programs, including Penn State and Michigan, for head coaching vacancies. He could have gone anywhere, but when Stefanski called and said, "I want you in Atlanta," Rees didn't hesitate. He said yes, because loyalty works both ways. And if Stefanski was willing to stake his reputation on bringing Rees along, Rees was willing to bet on Stefanski one more time. The reaction across the NFL was mixed. Some analysts praised the hire, pointing out that Rees is only 33 years old and has a brilliant offensive mind. He's been a coordinator at 3 major programs, Notre Dame, Alabama, and Cleveland, and he's worked with elite quarterbacks at every level. Others were skeptical, questioning why Stefanski would bring back a coordinator who just presided over the 31st ranked offense in football. Skip Bayless, never one to mince words, might call it a mistake. Cleveland fans are laughing, saying, "Good riddance, enjoy more of the same disaster." But Stefanski doesn't care about the noise. He knows what Rees can do, and more importantly, he knows that the failure in Cleveland wasn't Rees's fault. Let's talk about what Rees is walking into. The Atlanta Falcons finished 8-9 in 2025, tied for the best record in the NFC South with Tampa Bay and New Orleans. They didn't make the playoffs because of tiebreakers, but they were competitive, and offensively, they have pieces, real, legitimate elite pieces. Bijan Robinson just had a first-team All-Pro season, rushing for over 1,300 yards and proving he's one of the most dynamic backs in football. Drake London is coming off a season where he hauled in over 1,000 receiving yards. Chris Lindstrom is a perennial Pro Bowl guard who anchors the offensive line. And Kyle Pitts, despite his struggles and uncertain future, is still a freakish talent who could explode if used correctly. But there's a massive question mark. Quarterback. Michael Penix Jr., the 2024 first-round pick, tore his ACL late in the season and is recovering. Kirk Cousins, who Stefanski coached in Minnesota, is hitting free agency and may or may not return. The Falcons don't have a first-round pick in 2026 because they traded it away, so Rees and Stefanski are walking into a situation where they might have to develop a young quarterback or convince Cousins to come back or find someone else entirely. It's complicated, it's messy, but it's also infinitely better than what they had in Cleveland. Arthur Blank made it clear when he hired Stefanski that he's all in on this vision. In Kevin Stefanski, we have found a coach with the right vision, focus, and demeanor to lead our team into the future, Blank said in his statement. And part of that vision is Tommy Rees. Blank didn't push back. He didn't question. He didn't suggest alternatives. He trusted Stefanski's judgment and gave him exactly what he wanted. Because that's what ownership should do. Hire the right person, give them the resources they need, and get out of the way. It's a stark contrast to Cleveland, where Jimmy Haslam meddles, panics, and makes impulsive decisions that undermine his coaches at every turn. The Falcons also announced other hirings that show Stefanski is building a staff he trusts. Jacqueline Roberts, who worked with Stefanski and Rees in Cleveland as the coordinator of coaching operations, is coming to Atlanta as the manager of coaching operations. Bill Callahan, the legendary offensive line coach, is joining the staff. Jeff Ulbrich, who just led the Falcons to a franchise record 57 sacks as defensive coordinator, is being retained. Stefanski is surrounding himself with people he knows, people he trusts, people who understand his philosophy. And Tommy Rees is at the center of it all.
The emotional stakes for Rees are enormous. This is his second chance, his opportunity to prove that he's not just a young coordinator who got overwhelmed in Cleveland, he's a legitimate offensive mind who can design game plans, develop quarterbacks, and call plays at a high level. And if he succeeds in Atlanta, if the Falcons' offense becomes one of the best in the NFC South, if they start winning division titles and making playoff runs, Rees will be a hot head coaching candidate within a few years. But if he fails, if the offense struggles again, if the same issues that plagued him in Cleveland follow him to Atlanta, then his career as an NFL coordinator might be over before it really began. Stefanski knows this, and he's betting on Rees anyway, because that's what great leaders do. They believe in their people even when others don't. They give second chances, they create opportunities, and they take responsibility when things don't work out. Stefanski's legacy in Atlanta will be defined, in part, by whether Tommy Rees succeeds, and that's a risk Stefanski is willing to take. Meanwhile, back in Cleveland, the Browns are reeling. They didn't just lose Kevin Stefanski to the Falcons, they lost Tommy Rees too. And now those two are going to build an offense in the NFC South with better talent, better support, and better ownership. The Browns, meanwhile, are still searching for a head coach, still trying to figure out their quarterback situation, and still dealing with the fallout from years of organizational dysfunction. And every time the Falcons score a touchdown in 2026, every time Bijan Robinson breaks off a 60-yard run, every time Tommy Rees dials up a perfect play-action pass, Cleveland will be reminded of what they let walk out the door. Arthur Blank's decision to add Tommy Rees wasn't just about filling a coordinator spot. It was about supporting his head coach. It was about building a culture of trust and loyalty. It was about giving Kevin Stefanski everything he needs to succeed. And in a league where coaches are fired every year, where loyalty is rare, where organizations churn through staff like they're disposable, Blank's approach is refreshing. It's smart, and it might just be the difference between success and failure. Tommy Rees is 33 years old. He's been a coordinator at Notre Dame, Alabama, and Cleveland. He's worked with elite quarterbacks and developed offensive systems that have won games at the highest level. And now, thanks to Kevin Stefanski's request and Arthur Blank's approval, he has one more shot, one more chance to prove he belongs. And this time, he has the talent, the support, and the opportunity to do it right. The question now is whether he can deliver, whether the 31st ranked offense in Cleveland becomes a top 10 offense in Atlanta, whether the failures of the past become lessons that fuel future success, whether loyalty and trust can overcome doubt and skepticism. The NFL is watching, Cleveland is watching, and Tommy Rees is ready to prove everyone wrong. This story is based on official announcements from the Atlanta Falcons, reports from ESPN, Yahoo Sports, NFL Network, Fox Sports, NBC Sports, and various outlets covering Kevin Stefanski's coaching staff assembly and Tommy Rees's hiring.